All right, Lions fan, let's talk some Lions. I want to talk about Matt Patricia's philosophy and his the the logic behind so-called the madness of with the players that he picked and the contracts that he signed and his whole how he basically presented himself, for the team that is. I'm going to start off with the players that he signed. Let's say Halapalooty Vitae, uh, Justin Coleman, Trey Flowers, Danny Shelton, Jamie Collins. I guess you could say Jesse James and all the contracts that they would consider high or pay too much for second tier type talent. Why did he pay Trey Flowers so much money? Why did he pay Jamie Collins so much money? Why did he pay Halapalooty Vitae so much money? Well, the Lions for the benefit from that. The Danny Shelton thing, they able to get from up under it. Even if they didn't, they would have benefited from it. The Danny Amendola, they benefited from it. The Jamie Collins, like I said, Jamie Collins, Trey Flowers, and is there Halapalooty Vitae? Those three, the Lions going to benefit from them this year. Why did he pay them so much money? The New England way is this: you don't pay for talent. You pay for a player that can do or be five places at once. Now, I'm going to go with Trey Flowers for a second. The recent, the recent interview or the recent media question that was asked towards, I don't know if it was Aaron Glenn. I don't know who it was that was talking about coordinator or position coach or whoever that it was talking to about the defense, and they was asking about their base and what basically going to be the philosophy and so forth. So they said they're going to come out with a base 3-4, right? A base 3-4 leaves. Okay, you look at predominantly majority of the great teams were a base 3-4. They were a base 3-4. Some that had benefit off of that was a 4-3, but the majority of the dominance of the defenses have been a 3-4. And then you branch off of that to a 4-3, then you a 5-2 and so forth, right? Trey Flowers is recently being suggested to move to the outside. And I believe when Matt Patricia was here, he tried him out on the outside and it was laughed at, scoffed at, and so forth. But the reason why you pay Trey Flowers so much money, he can play inside, outside on a defensive line as well as the linebacker core. He can do so many different things. So you pay that max amount of money. I think it was 90 million. You pay that amount of money for a player that can do five different things equally as well, right? Versus paying one player that could do one thing well. Say for example, they made Matthew Stafford the highest paid quarterback for doing what? For being what? What was his skill set? The skill set was having a arm that can do all the throws. I don't know. He doesn't do one thing well. So they overpaid for him. That's why they got the results that they did. In comparison to Aaron Rodgers, what does Aaron Rodgers do well above everybody else? He's a very accurate quarterback. I guess regardless if he's inside the pocket, outside the pocket, his way to be able to connect with the receiver, not just the receiver per se, how his mind can angle his arm and to trigger it at the right speed, right? To get to the receiver at tight windows on the run, etc. So he can do that very extremely well. Trey Flowers is a guy that can play the defensive end or inside on the defensive line. Now they're talking about moving to the outside, so he could do 3 or 4 different things equally well. They can position him in so many different places. Same thing for Jamie Collins. Same thing for Halapalooty Vitae. They initially Halapoulivaati Vitae, they brought him as a free agent that he can do what? He can play the he can play the tackle, either right or left, right? But now they're moving him to guard. They paid him 50 million. Now, in comparison, they was talking about Jake Coughlin and Glasgow, right? That was the reason. Okay, they made a gripe about signing Halapoulivaati Vitae when they can decide they could have signed Glasgow, re-signed Glasgow, and they could have signed Jake Coughlin for that amount, right? And based upon that first year, what they received out of Halapoulivaati Vitae, they consider him as a waste, as a bust, get rid of him, right? But now you're going to move him next to Frank Ragnow and Penei Sewell. That right side is going to be a monster. I said that last year when they had Jonah Jackson next to Ragnow and Halapoulivaati Vitae was going to play the tackle. But he was due to injury, he wasn't able to do that position, so therefore they had to shuffle around, and nobody was ever really to see his full potential. But if you could get a player that played in the Super Bowl at a high level, it's not about the so-called stats per se, or even the grading that some of these analysts point out, but it is about efficiency at the time that you're on the field. Now, we're talking about in the big games. When he was in the Super Bowl, in the playoff games, how did he fare off? Right? In the regular season, you have a lot. You got game tape that people can go off of to, pretty much angle you. But when you're talking about those games where it's all on the line, that's where it's actually for your very best. How does that player perform? Halapoulivaati Vitae performed well. He substituted for, I think, Jason Peters, and I can't think of the other tackle that they had there. I'm drawing a blank. And he substituted for both of them. So somebody said, well, why would you pay $50 million for a sub? What would you pay for a rookie that has no experience? But you're basically banking off the potential that he showed in college. What would you pay for that? And they said, for example, when they was picking number 3 last year, what would you pay for that? Now, somebody may say they would instead of drafting Okudah, they could have went ahead and they could have drafted Mekhi Becton. Okay, I'll give you that. They could have. But then they still would be trying to get a cornerback, right? Jeff Okudah was efficient when he had a good 3-4, right? Not a good 3-4, forgive me. A good front 7. All right, so you put in front of him a good front 7. He's a piece to the puzzle. He's not the puzzle. He's a piece to the puzzle. So, Jamie Collins, you can move him all the way around in the defensive, in the linebacker core. You can move him around, so you pay him that money. People say, well, he didn't do nothing up under Patricia. Patricia didn't have all his ducks in a row. That's within himself as well as the player personnel. They say he got all his players in. He didn't get all his players in. He still needed leaders. That's what this draft was all about. When I say you gave Quinn and Patricia this year to go into the season, that's what this draft would have been about. Picking out your leaders or your complementary pieces to your leaders on your team. So like if you have a Trey Flowers on your team, that's a leader, right? You have a Frank Ragnow, that's a leader. Excuse me. So what you do is you complement them. Frank Ragnow, you complement him with what? Penei Sewell, right? Trey Flowers, you complement him with what? With who? You could say Levi Onwuzurike, Zuki, or Alim McNeil. You complement it. Complement it. Brockers, complement it. Trey Flowers is the leader of the defensive line. The linebacker core, I'm going to say the leader is going to be Derek Barnes. So Jamie Collins is a perfect complement It's him. You put Trey Flowers on the outside of that. Come on, man. I mean, everything that they're doing is what I was expecting for the previous regime to do. But to go back to the point, what I'm saying is about the players that they brought in here, the Jesse James. All right, it didn't work out according to plan because the reason why they brought him in here wasn't a part of the plan. They brought him in here for a backup plan. The backup plan, the original plan, was to draft Josh Allen. If he would have failed to them at 7, if anybody remember, Quinn went on the record said they don't have the parts or the chips to be able to trade to go up. So the guy who was top on their board was Josh Allen. Is by far Josh Allen. People could say it was this or that. They made alterations by going, this. It wasn't T.J. Hockenson. T.J. Hockenson was the consolation prize. Somebody said, how do you know that? That's why they brought in Jesse James. They never said they was going to run a 2 tight end offense. He was the backup plan. So if you couldn't get Josh Allen, the best consolation prize is T.J. Hockenson. He's the best blue chipper on the board. You take it over Oliver or Ed Oliver or anybody else they could have had. So the players, going back to Patricia and Quinn, when they so-called overpaid for those players, they did the right thing for those players. Because each one of those players can give you more than what their position group is or what they was brought in for. So like if they brought in Danny Amendola to be a receiver, he's going to give you more than just a receiver. He's going to give you kick returner, punt returner. He's going to give you a guy that can coach the receivers. He's going to give you a guy that can play special teams. And he play offense. He can play defense. He can give you so many different things. You overpay that. Not overpay that. You pay that price for it. People say, why would you pay him that much money for that? Danny Shelton, you can play him at both positions. He's just that dominant, right? They didn't overpay Danny Shelton. They gave him a little bit, just like the same thing they did with Deron Harmon. They didn't overpay. Deron Harmon, they traded a 5th for him, and they didn't overpay for him. So the Justin Coleman, he could play what, slot? He could play safety. He could play outside. He can play inside, outside, and even possibly some safety. So you pay him that money. They brought in guys to play just in case of an emergency. That they had to switch them around. It was a well done, executed plan. It's just they didn't have this year to finish the deal. Everything that they was willing to do, everything that Brad Holmes was willing to do this year, it would have been exactly the same thing that Quinn and Patricia would have done. Now, people say they wouldn't have picked Derek Barnes because he'd probably been slow. I disagree. You have to put your players in place first. You have to see what you have on the board. You got to find your leaders. You got to find those that you can build off of and those that you can substitute addition with subtraction. They need 3 years for that. The 4th year is the last drop of it. And then that's when you close out the deal, get ready to be a contender. If you notice, the year before last, they was knocking on the door. The first year, they shut it down early. They shut it down real early, and that's how they end up getting the number 7 pick in the draft, I believe. And this would have been a 3rd year. I think this would have been a 3rd year. Their first year together, they drafted T.J. Hockenson. The 2nd year together, they drafted Okuda. And I believe this would have been their 3rd year together if they was set their position. So Brad Holmes did the right thing. He's no better than Quinn Patricia. He's no more, no better. No more, no less better than Patricia. Forgive me. He is, in fact, I was give him this. He's just experienced. And that allowed him to be a balanced intellect. He's not willing to do all the work himself. So he hired a lot of people that's going to do it for him. He brought a lot of head coaches in here, even if there were previously head coaches or there was a position group that was going for a head coaching job. He brought a lot of head coaching positions here. And the reason for that is because this organization is bigger. I mean, this losing is bigger than just wins and losses for 60 years. It's bigger than that. This is a mental thing. So you need all the mind capacity that you can as head coaches. So imagine putting, let's say, Bill Walsh, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Parcells, and you could say Bill Belichick, Tony Dungy, all on this Lions team. They can get you a Super Bowl. Each one of them doing their position group, they can get you a Super Bowl. With that being said, that's the same thing. What I'm saying is that is the exact same thing that what the Lions did with the Lynn and the Glenn and so forth, all the AP and all the different other, I think it's Aubrey Pleasant, I think is his name, and all the different other groups that they brought in here, even for the upper management. This was a huge wall that needed to be torn down. And people really need to give credit where credit is due, even though they won't, because the results didn't turn out how they would like. Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, they did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. In most cases, it's not about the wins and losses, but it is about building a foundation. And they built one heck of a foundation for this current thing, this current regime could just build off of. Just build, just continue to build it. All right, Lions fans, I salute.